Hi, I'm Ashley with Campbell. Thanks for investing your time to help your community be a great place to live. Before you watch the video, make sure to click the subscribe button so that we can help you make educated decisions as a board member.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Tiernan. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Campbell, one of the 5 owners of the company. I'm also a licensed CAM, and I work with a lot of our clients, condo clients, on some complex issues like these. And I'm also, I should let everyone know, I'm also a proud owner of a Tesla Model 3 since 2019. So I've been dealing with this for a little while, and I've worked with a lot of our condos on this. For those of you not familiar with Campbell, we've been in business since 1953, and we manage over 450 homeowner and condo associations between Dade and St. Lucie here in South Florida. So we have 2 very important guests with us here today to help us understand EV charging at condos. Our first guest is Dave Peterson, the Senior Director of Business Development for ChargePoint, and our second is Andrew Llorens, Director of Business Development for Rexel USA. So one last thing I'm going to mention is we also have a blog post regarding our implementation with ChargePoint at Seagate Towers in Delray. This is going to be something that Ashley will send out in the follow-up email after her webinar. And also one thing I'm going to be doing during the webinar today, the key thing I'm going to be doing is just kind of monitoring the questions, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. But please make sure that you keep it focused on what the meeting's about, and we'll go from there. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. And hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you to Campbell Property Management for hosting this. All right, well, let's get started. So as Dan mentioned, my name is David Peterson. I lead business development for North America here at ChargePoint, and I'm joined by Andrew Llorens from Rexel.
Hey, I'm Andrew Llorens for the Rexel USA. I'm a Director of Business Development for the state of Florida for our region. I focus mostly on electrification and EV charging.
So to get us started, first of all, thank you for joining this webinar. It's great to see this turnout. So what we hope you take away with you today from this webinar is that you leave with an understanding of why your property needs EV charging, which ChargePoint solution is the best fit, best practices for a smooth rollout, and who to go to with questions. And as you see there on the screen, we'll address those topics in order, and then we'll wrap up with some Q&A, and we'll make sure to leave ample time for that. Andrew, do you want to introduce Rexel?
Yeah. So Rexel is one of the largest publicly traded electrical distributors on the planet. Our headquarters, global headquarters, is out of Paris, France. We have been in business for about 50 years in multiple different countries, very strong in the United States, North America, and Europe, in Asia. We have 1,900 locations across 24 countries. Again, out of Paris, so we're listed in the Paris Stock Exchange, and we are probably the largest distributor of EV chargers in definitely North America and possibly in the world by volume.
Thanks, Andrew. And ChargePoint's been in the EV charging business for over 15 years, actually coming on, I believe, 17. We are the largest EV charging network provider in North America. We have operations in Europe as well. And we do the following. We are a vertically integrated hardware, such charging stations, software, and services provider. And so you get the full stack of everything you need with ChargePoint. All right, so time for a quick poll. Do you own an EV, and do you plan to buy one in the next year? And looks like the responses come in with no, as the 56% say no, I do not plan on buying one, followed by no, but I plan to buy one in the next year. And lastly, yes. So we had 18% coming in as yes, buying one in the next year, 26%, and no, I don't plan on buying one, 56%. All right, next poll. What percentage of EV charging happens at home or work? And a third of you got the right answer, which is 80%. 80% of EV charging is done at home, almost always overnight. or while a car is parked during the workday. And so, as many of you do already today with your ICE cars, right? Your internal combustion engine vehicles, you take those home, you park them at your condo, and you leave them there overnight. And so that's exactly where EVs charge the majority of the time, is overnight at home, which is why we need to be thinking about EV charging infrastructure in condos. So another thing to think about is how new EV sales are an increasingly large percentage of overall vehicle sales, as these charts tell us. And I think a couple interesting points here are the chart on the right is telling us that there's an inflection point on the horizon, and it's quite near term. So here we are sitting in 2024, and 2030, right, give or take a few years, is right around the corner. And that's the point when more than 50% of new vehicle sales will be electric, right, or plug-in. But another thing to think about is the sort of the psychographics of who the next buyers are of EVs. So younger generations are increasingly interested in buying in electric vehicles. You see the points below, with 47% of millennials, 41% of Gen Z, and 38% of Gen X interested in buying an EV, according to a poll or survey done by Ward's Auto in 2022. So this is why it's really important to be thinking not just about today, but also about who you want your condo properties to appeal to and what kind of tenants you're going to have or want to attract over the next few years. And Florida, surprisingly, to me, because I'm based in California, has the second largest number of registered EVs in the entire country, the state of Florida, and that's ahead of Texas, New York, New Jersey, and Washington. So this phenomenon of EV adoption is very healthy in the state of Florida. And so this is absolutely something that needs to be taken into consideration when you're thinking about your properties and how best to prepare them for the coming wave of EVs. And what we see at ChargePoint is a ton of growth. So we have over 7,600 charging stations. This is the publicly accessible charging stations in the state of Florida. Let me clarify, ports. These are actual plugs where you can plug in your vehicles. Some of our stations have 2 ports. But we've seen 26% year-on-year growth. That's started, looking at the year from October 22 to October 2023. And that's in terms of our port growth, which is organic sales growth. But session growth is driven by drivers. So that's actual charging sessions where people plug in and charge their vehicles. And we've seen 65% year-on-year growth over that same time period. So what that tells us is EV drivers are growing, they're charging more. And if you recall from the earlier slides, if 80% of EV charging happens at home overnight, it's definitely something that you're going to want to be investing in your condos. And not only are we seeing the growth with EV charging, we are also seeing the growth with the various models available for purchase or lease. And so all major OEMs, all major auto manufacturers, the brands that you know, and some new brands, have or are introducing electric vehicles, increasing the amount of choice that drivers have to go electric. So let's talk about condos more in depth. So ChargePoint's been providing charging for condos for many years, since 2011 to be more precise. And we have a pretty in-depth understanding of what it takes, soup to nuts, to get charging installed into condos. We've done over 10,000 installations. But what we want you to take away from this slide is that we really understand the use cases at a nuanced level. Right, so whether it's assigned parking, community parking, a mixed use scenario, or even a valet scenario, we have solutions that address each one of those. And the other thing that's probably very much on your minds is, how do I pay for this? So we offer a variety of solutions, knowing that not all condo associations want to procure charging in the same way. So we offer capital purchase solutions. We offer a subscription option, which includes the charging station, the software, and support. And we call that CPaaS, or ChargePoint as a Service. And we also offer a finance solution and a couple different flavors there. some that actually include the construction going all the way back to the panel, or in some cases even the meter. So lots of different options to meet your budgetary or procurement preferences. Now, what makes us pretty unique at ChargePoint is we don't just do the charging stations, right? We are a full stack provider, meaning we do the charging stations, the software to manage the charging stations, and we also provide the support. So what we're showing you here is that you have a dashboard, and this is accessible to anybody that is managing the charging stations, to monitor what's happening, to set the pricing or access policies for your tenants. So you can, for example, set specific policies for your tenants, for guests, and even for the general public, if you should so decide to make them accessible, depending on where your charging stations are located in your property. And so this is a dashboard that's very intuitive, that allows you to generate reports, if you need to track to see how much different tenants consumed, etc. It's all very intuitive and user-friendly. Now, we also understand that many of these condos are power constrained, especially in the parking lot or the parking garage. And so ChargePoint has developed some unique solutions around power management. And so, not to get too wonky here, but we wanted to show you an example where you could wire up 5 charging stations to a single 60 amp circuit. So instead of having a one-to-one relationship between a charging station and a circuit, which is what many people think, we're doing a many-to-one relationship between a charging station and a circuit. In this case, 5-to-1. And so we have 2 circuits in this example, so we have 10 charging stations. But you may not have 10 tenants with vehicles. And so prepare, so make your facility, your parking garage, ready to absorb or be able to charge 10 vehicles. If you think about, what we talked about at the outset of the presentation, with Florida being the number 2 ranked state in terms of EV registrations, with the oncoming wave of EV adoption, especially with the high interest in younger generations, you're going to want to be thinking about how to future-proof this installation and just do the construction bit once. That way you're just having to install charging stations as your tenants arrive. And so in this example, we show you the time it would take to get to 20 miles with this example. And so it takes about 1.2 hours. But now you've added more vehicles, you've got lots of tenants with EVs, and so it takes a little bit longer, right? In this example, to get to 20 miles, it's taking about 3.4 hours, but that's okay because these vehicles are parked overnight for a long time. And so you're actually able to charge a lot of vehicles, in this case 10, right, with not a lot of power. And in this example, we're talking about 2 60 amp circuits. So that's the takeaway. Lots of vehicles, not a lot of power. And in many cases, we can use the existing panel infrastructure that you have. And so how do we get this done, right? How do we get the charging stations in the ground? Well, we at ChargePoint work with a variety of partners, and one of which is Rexel. They're one of our preferred partners across the United States, and particularly in Florida. And so companies like Rexel guide customers from the very beginning, when you're trying to just design a site, all the way through to installation and activation once a station is installed. And so Andrew's going to tell us all about what services their company provides and how they can assist you in your charging station journey. So with that, I'll hand it over to Andrew.
All right, let me put my video on, and I'm going to share my screen here. 1 second. All right, can everybody see it?
No, I don't see your screen.
Yep, now I see it.
Perfect. All right. So I'm Andrew Llorens. When I work for Rexel USA, which is the parent company for Rexel Energy Solutions. I'm going to come over here and show you this slide of how our structure as Rexel kind of functions. So we have our Rexel group out of Paris who manages 26 different countries. Again, we're a publicly traded electrical distributor that sells everything from EV chargers, renewable products like solar panels, everything to your common pipe and wire, and the lighting and gear that goes into all the buildings that you guys live in. Underneath that, right, we've got a bunch of resources that we utilize in order to be able to execute on these different things that are a very large, complex customer, large, complex company. And underneath that, we have multiple banners. One of them being Rexel Energy, but in your market, for example, in the state of Florida, we have Gexpro, which used to be GE Supply, which stands for GE Professionals. We have Rexel. We have Mayer Electric under that, and we're always looking for new acquisitions. In the state of Florida alone, we've got 23 branches, and we have a centralized hub in Orlando with about $65 million worth of material, and we have a huge stocking position of electrical vehicle chargers. But again, we are a big time distributor. We are one of the largest in the planet. I think we are number 1 or number 2 from a publicly traded perspective. So as Rexel, what are we trying to do to help customers? We're not looking to just make a single transaction with an electric vehicle charger. One of the things that we try to focus on is a high level of customer service. So rather than you guys coming to us and saying, hey, I need an electric vehicle charger, I'm not really sure what I need, what we've done is we've partnered up both internally with our own resources, but also partnered up with a lot of key electrical contractors that can do the installation. So what we want to do is whenever you reach out to Rexel and saying, hey, I want to get an electric vehicle charger in our property, we're going to work with you in figuring out exactly the charger that you need that meets the best price point and it makes sense from the application. So we will communicate with your team. We can send somebody out there to do a site visit. A lot of times I do them myself. I'm out of Tampa, Florida. So if you're in the state of Florida, I can easily come in, drive to you guys, look at the infrastructure with a contractor that is a certified ChargePoint installer, and explain the process of how this would work, right? And as we're going that, we can look at all the different things like how many chargers you need, what the infrastructure looks like, answer those critical questions. More than happy to sit down in an HOA meeting or a board meeting and have a conversation regarding not just the charger piece abilities, but also have a conversation regarding the adoption rate of electrical EVs in the state of Florida at a national level, and why it's the critical thing for multifamily to be implementing chargers, right? And one of the big things is dwell time. So when you're the place where you sleep at night, and secondary your place of work, but number 1 is where you sleep at night, is where your vehicle is going to be sitting idle for the longest amount of time, and that's where you're going to need your chargers. I live in a house. I've got an electric vehicle outside, and for me, it's a very easy solution. I just put a charger in home, and I charge my car every single day or every couple of days. Multifamily is a little different, and we want to make sure that we're able to support you guys from start to finish. Everything from helping selecting that charger, looking at the infrastructure piece, making those, connecting you with the partners, making you, introductions with electrical contractors that are certified installers that we've vetted through extensive processes, and making sure that you're going to have a great experience from start to finish. So one of the things we're going to look at, again, is dedicated assigned parking stalls. There's different ways of looking at this in different ways in what you're trying to accomplish in an apartment complex. Is it feasible to put a charger at every single stall, right? Do you want to do make ready? Do you want to increase your infrastructure to a certain level? I'll give you an example. Right now, in a lot of places that require new construction, 20% of parking spaces have make ready. British Columbia and Canada, they require 100% of all parking spaces now will have make ready. This doesn't mean you're going to have a charger in each place, but it means that you will have the electrical infrastructure, the conduit, and the wire run for you to be able to plop that charger down and make that easy connection, right? And that's usually done on a new construction. But for you guys, we're going to help you looking at what makes sense based on your adoption rates, based on how many people that you have, and how you're looking to create a plan progressively over the next couple of years as that adoption rate and registered vehicles in the state of Florida keeps increasing over time. The other thing that we can look at is with our electrical contractor partners is what kind of service requirement from infrastructure perspective that you're looking to get. What is the current lead time for a service? Right now, in the state of Florida, depending on the utility, sometimes it's 10 to 12 months out. But we can also use things like load management, power management to be able to reduce the infrastructure that you actually need and utilize the current power that you have to keep your total installation costs down, right? And we can do that together with our installation partners. A lot of times people say, I want to go faster. I want to put as many, I want to get the fastest charger possible. But the reality, again, we go back to what's the dwell time. In multifamily, in the place where you're actually sleeping at night, it's actually not advantageous. I got customers all the time that ask, I want to put a level 3 charger, 480 volts, because I want to be able to charge my car in 30 minutes. Well, that could work in an opportunity like a McDonald's, but an opportunity like yourselves where it's multifamily, where the car's going to be sitting idle for a very long time. I always say, let's put more ports. They don't have to be very fast, and we can do power management and derate those chargers as more vehicles are actually utilizing the current infrastructure piece, right? And that way you have a better user and experience, but you have more ports out there that they can just plug in. Common area versus shared parking. What should my driver to port ratio be? That's again something that we can have a conversation about, looking again at your current tenants, what their adoption rate is looking at in that area, and kind of make those assessments with you. And does my common area parking service multiple driver groups, tenants, visitors, retail parking? I'll give you a perfect example. Right now in the state of Florida, we're doing a lot of CPF 50s, which is a phenomenal station that ChargePoint has. And if you're looking at just strictly multifamily and you don't want to have this to be more of a public-facing charger, we're utilizing a lot of those. This gives you access control. It gives you the ability to really just service your community that you have. But if you wanted to use something that's more of a mixed use, maybe you have a restaurant there, maybe you want to cater to the people that are coming to a restaurant, maybe you're attached to a mixed use facility with office space or restaurants or stores, retail, whatever it might be, we might kind of change that mixture of chargers where we could have ones that are more public facing. So we're also catering to those people as well. So one of the things again that we'll look at is when we bring that contractor out there and that partner out there to look at your infrastructure system, is we do a review of your current electrical system, how much power is available, visual review, updated single line diagrams, 30-day load study, and can you leverage active load management to increase your port count with less upgrades? Again, one of the biggest things that we look at when we're installing chargers is a lot of times people say, well, my bill of material for the physical hardware is X. And then they look at the pricing with a contractor to do the installation, and it's multiple times higher in the actual cost of the physical chargers. So one of the things that we do with Rexel is, as we're training the contractors on the hardware, we also really, really stress that let's give options to people like yourselves and say, hey, we can do it this way, and we can bring the infrastructure up and maybe do some make ready for the future, but it's going to cost you X amount of money, right? And this is a perfect scenario. But if you just don't have the capital, be able to max the output of every single charger, we can use a lot of that power management to spread that with the limited infrastructure that you have and give you two different options, right? And a lot of times, to me, it makes more sense. Let's put more ports in. Let's kind of bring that threshold a little bit lower, because your current adoption rate is not going to be as high. And as people come in, they can still utilizing it, because that vehicle is sitting idle for such a long time, you'll be able to charge more vehicles, and I think the customer experience is going to be better. One of the things that we look at is the average American only drives about 36 miles a day. So usually, even at a lower output amperage charger, and we're using power management across multiple stations, we can still charge that vehicle fairly quickly and have a better customer experience. And then, can this review be supported by on-site engineering team? Do you need to get into a contract for the service, that's something that we can help you with. We've got a lot of connections in the industry that can help you look at your site, work with engineering and figuring out what's going to be the best situation for you guys. Planning and what should you be thinking about again? Planning, incentives, and budgeting. Budgeting, who's paying for the installation and activation of the EV chargers? All residents, those who just want EV charging, etc. Everybody has a different view on this. There's certain places that say, hey, we are required to put EV charging in our properties, and they want that homeowner to be able to do that, pay for it itself, and have deeded parking. We can do that as well. Sometimes they say we want to have a couple dedicated spots for everybody to utilize that will be in designated electric vehicle charging locations, and we can do that as well, right? So depending on how you want to structure it, ChargePoint has different plans that cater to those specific needs, and some of them are actually work very well. For example, ChargePoint has a plan that allows the homeowner themselves to pay for the monthly network fees and have a direct relationship with ChargePoint. And the way the revenue split model works, it would be more advantageous to the property. It doesn't work in all situations, but in situations where, the way that I look at it is time is money. The more time that a HOA is having to interact with the chargers or having to fix problems, it's just going to take more time and more money. So when it comes to deeded parking, we have a solution with ChargePoint that really kind of passes that along to the homeowner, and they're basically the owner of that charger. They're dealing directly with ChargePoint with the network, and the only thing that you're really doing is kind of setting the cost per kilowatt hour, because most of the time it's going to be on a common meter. It's just coming off the community meter. You're going to be making that money back and being paid by ChargePoint as the energy is being consumed. But then the homeowner or that property owner it's their charger and it's kind of their responsibility, right? Another thing we want to look at is the tax credit, the C30, 30% out-of-pocket costs for capital expenses up to $100,000 per station. I would talk to your accountants at tax form 8911 and look at that. Based on the requirements, do you fit in that category, take advantage of some of those incentives? And then developing an EV policy. Who's going to manage the EV charging? The property manager, condo association. What does my training process look like? Will the solution that you provide a training session for my team? Does the training include troubleshooting process? So one of the things we do is that we have a strong partnership with ChargePoint, and they have phenomenal customer service. But we have a lot of people in it within our organization, a lot of ex-ChargePoint employees. I think we're probably the biggest recruiter of ChargePoint employees because they know so much about the industry that we can utilize internally to help support you guys and do trainings. I do a lot of the trainings myself, whether it's from the beginning stages of kind of implementing a strategy, whether it's just consulting on what makes the most sense for the property, but also I do trainings on again, overall industry, how to use the chargers, what makes the most sense for the property. And again, you also have the ability to go to ChargePoint and they do a great job in supporting the customers. And I think that's a big difference between a company with a longevity of ChargePoint versus other manufacturers. As Rexel, we sell a ton of different manufacturers, but we really look at is what are the best people on the market with longevity that are going to be around for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And there's very, very few of them, ChargePoint being the largest and number one. And I think that's something that you need to really consider is a lot of companies are coming into the market right now. I could probably start up a charging company tomorrow with about $100,000 of capital. A lot of this stuff is outsourced. It's a white labeled product. You want to work with a good, strong partner like ChargePoint and Rexel. ChargePoint's vertically integrated, kind of like David was talking about, and that's what you want. You want somebody that's doing their own network, all that software that you're utilizing, and also the hardware itself. So when there's ever a problem, you can go to one person, one manufacturer and say, hey, please help fix it, rather than having a small company that doesn't manufacture anything, doesn't even create their own network and website to be able to manage the chargers, and it's just a lot of finger pointing. But yes, we can provide any training that you need. How do I plan on marketing EV charging for future buyers? We can help with that. We have a large marketing team that can help create literature, help create a strategy, and talk about the advantages of having EV charging in property. One of the things that we hear a lot is if you're an electric vehicle owner, your cost, to drive an electric vehicle, especially in Florida, our average cost per kilowatt hour is roughly like 14, 15 cents. So to drive a car, an EV, it's extremely cheap, right? So there's a huge cash savings by buying an electric vehicle with less maintenance and less cost per mile to drive. The problem is that if you don't have a charger at home or at multifamily and you're having to use level 3 charging, your cost per kilowatt hour becomes substantially higher. I'll give you an example. I was traveling to Miami last week and I used some supercharger EV Go sites and I was paying upwards of 59 cents per kilowatt hour to charge my vehicle, right? When you can go at home and charge at somewhere in the mid-teens. So it's a substantial cost increase. And again, that's where your dwell times to be the highest. So helping, if people who have electric vehicles want to move to a property, they're essentially going to need to have those chargers at the facility, especially because a lot of people buy electric vehicles. It makes sense financially for them, right? And how do I plan on recouping costs from EV charging? Increasing parking stall fees, establish a pricing policy for charging. ChargePoint can do a variety of different things with electric vehicle chargers. We can do things like, charge per hour. We can charge per kilowatt hour. And we can even do things like having idle fees, right? A lot of times we want to try to increase the use per port. So if a port's being utilized by a homeowner only for an hour or 2 hours because they only drive a couple miles a day, and that vehicle sits idle on that charger stuck there for multiple hours, you can choose, hey, I'm going to charge $5 an hour or $5 for just not moving your vehicle as an incentive to get that homeowner or that person out of that parking space, and then keep turning those with limited infrastructure, limited ports. And that could overall help reduce your port count for chargers. Unparalleled support from RES installation. Planning ahead, should you be thinking about near-term solutions while working towards long-term plans? Absolutely. I'm a big believer of implementing chargers as soon as possible. A lot of times you're going to have the owners of the property, they're waiting on infrastructure, they're waiting on the chargers to be installed in order for them to go out there and buy an electric vehicle, because again, it doesn't really pencil in that you're having to use a supercharger. It makes the most sense to be able to charge at home, which would be where you guys are. So as you put chargers in, what we're seeing is that homeowners are immediately taking advantage of that, buying electric vehicles, and now you're going to have a plan for the future of how you're going to service that increase in new electric vehicle users, so you don't have these bottlenecks. And again, it goes back to leaning to future-proofing your installation. Same thing with contractors. The contractors that we work with can give you a situation where we can maybe do some make ready, oversize your infrastructure on the gear side, on your panels, run electrical and pipe underground, and have those sites ready. So when you decide to move forward and add other EV chargers, we can do that with minimal cost, right? And just kind of do it at once. But we can have those good, better, best scenarios and price them according what your budget is and what your necessities is and what makes the most sense for your future. Also paying attention to ADA requirements, installing in common areas and shared parking. That's something that we do really well with our contractor partners, and making sure that we're establishing those procedures and working within those rules. And then obviously leveraging active load management. I think that's a huge one. Like I said again, especially in high dwell locations like multifamily, where your car's sitting idle for many hours, we can install more ports, kind of like David was showing in his slide, putting more chargers out there. That way we have more people utilizing that infrastructure, and then kind of throttling those chargers down if it makes sense from a cost perspective when you're adding that infrastructure. So this is kind of the way that we do it. Whenever you're looking to install a charger or you want to get more information, you can have a conversation with a ChargePoint representative or work through us. We will find a contractor in your local market who has experience installing ChargePoint chargers. We'll look at the facility, we'll look at the current infrastructure and make sure that it gives you the different options of where to install them, how to do it right. A big thing is, for example, cost. If you have a load center or a power source and install a charger very close to it, you have a very minimal cost of doing the installation. I had an opportunity to do one in our location the other day in one of our facilities, and we got a quote for $1,500 to run it, to do a short run from a load center, and then it was 10 times more to run it about, I think, 25 yards away because of directional boring and what the contractors need to do to get power out there at that location. So we can work with you guys and the contractor to help understand that and those different variables that you need to help reduce your total overall cost. But Rexel will document site requirements, again, access to electrical infrastructure, develop infrastructure site plans, and provide the quote with that partner of ours to the property. Then Rexel will coordinate with the property for contracting and installing and try to turn that project to a turnkey solution for you guys. And then once we deploy, we activate. ChargePoint activates charging network, applies a pricing policy depending on how you want to structure your policy, whether you want to charge a little more to help cover some of your operating expenses, or is it just kind of a break-even type of deal, depending on what each property wants to do. And then coordinating ongoing operations with property and partner. And I think that's my last one. Right, David?
Yep. Thanks, Andrew. So in conclusion, we want you to be thinking not just about today, year one, where you might just have a handful of vehicles at your properties, but be thinking longer term about where the market's going, how to best meet your tenant needs as the penetration of electric vehicles increases over time. And really, we're talking over the very near time horizon. So we have the right solutions to address your scale needs. Remember, starting with a handful of vehicles, being able to put in the wiring to be able to charge multiple vehicles, but at the same time, not burdening your electrical capacity, right? So we're trying to keep costs low, and that's really the triple underscore here, right? We keep costs low. And then we've got the solutions, whether it's dedicated, mixed use, shared, or valet, whatever the use case, we can work with you to make sure that we've got the best solution in place that's software enabled to make sure that your tenants are happy, that costs are apportioned in the fairest way possible. So you have everything you need, all the tools you need at your fingertips. So thank you very much for your attention today. Hopefully you found this informative. And for any follow-ups, please reach out to our partner, Rexel. Of course, our contact information, myself and those at Campbell Properties, was provided at the very beginning of the presentation. So if you have our email addresses, feel free to reach out as well. So with that, I'll hand it back over to our partners at Campbell Properties.
Thank you guys very much. Do you have time for a few questions? There's a few that we didn't get answered as we were going along. And actually, if all of you still on, 179 of you could complete the poll, we would greatly appreciate it. But as we're doing that, do you guys have a few minutes for some questions?
Absolutely.
Sure. So the first one, and I'll just mark this as we're answering it live, is how do you work this logistically with a building with tight outdoor parking?
Tight outdoor parking. By that, I mean, I guess that means limited outdoor parking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with limited outdoor parking, what we would probably do is set up some kind of shared use. Because if it's dedicated, then that probably means you're not going to get as much utilization on that charging station. So you'd have to obviously understand your specific needs. Everything is quite unique in frankly any scenario, whether it's condos or retail parking. But probably off the top of my head, some form of shared use solution is probably the best. That we can get some high turnover on a handful of stations.
Yeah, I know we've seen it down in Miami in particular. There's a scarcity of parking. They have a lot of valet, and that valet And if they have the valet, that can kind of solve itself sometimes, right? You
That's
could
true.
dedicate some valet spots. So
There's also some pricing policies, and they're not necessarily, it doesn't always have to be pricing, but you can put in place some policies that encourage turnover. So if you're trying to get, let's say the association decides that, what's fair is, no more than 3 hours, let's say, per vehicle or something like that, during certain periods. Well, you can set reminders, right, to let the person know that they need to move their vehicle after 3 hours or something like that. So we've got different tools to be able to, align the behavior, or rather align the charging usage to the behavior that you want to see in your parking lot.
Right. Next question was, and I think you mentioned this earlier, can you assist HOAs or condos on selecting the best locations for the charging units?
Absolutely. And that's typically done with partners like Rexel, who will come out, look at the panel, the location of that panel, the location of where you'd like to put in the charging, and take into account, of course, the specific context, if it's dedicated, shared, etc. So we absolutely work through all of those constraints and try to minimize the cost.
Right. Let's see. Let's see the next one.
And Andrew, feel free to jump in with some answers to these questions if they're more in your camp.
Absolutely.
There was a question about, besides 30C federal tax credit, are there any other utility or state subsidies available? People always like to ask that. So, is anyone aware?
Andrew, are you aware of any additional local incentives?
So in Florida, there's very few, depending on your utility. There's a couple. We can kind of help with that. So whenever we're looking at the property, just let us know, we can go up. But Florida historically has not been, everything from EV chargers to even LED lighting, we don't really offer too much in the state. There's never been any big incentives. Utilities are offering here and there a couple different things, but not from the state level.
If you could figure out a way to explain how that's hurricane proof in your building, I can tell you where you can get some credit. So that would be a, a weird stretch. So someone asked, what is ChargePoint's response time for equipment malfunctions, for software malfunctions?
Our response time. So we're pretty quick in terms of being able to detect an issue. So because everything is software driven, all the stations communicate back to our cloud, and so we'll be able to detect an issue usually before someone notices that there's a problem. And many of these issues, if they're software issues, they'll autocorrect, right? So they can get fixed. But if there's, a big maintenance problem, something like that, then we're pretty fast to get out there on site. I know with the Assure program, right, we guarantee that the repair happens within 24 hours of the replacement part shipping. So we are pretty quick. We know that especially in the home case, right, this is a critical charging area, right? As we talked about earlier in the presentation, right? 80% of EV charging happens at home or at work. So we are really fast to make sure we're repairing stations, especially in those contexts.
Yeah, and to add to that, understand that EV charging or EVs it's a pretty new market. There's a lot of companies out there. Currently, the market is completely oversaturated with manufacturers. And the reality is your upfront capital to start an EV charging manufacturer by having your network and your hardware outsourced is roughly $100,000. I've actually done it with developers, and I've done it with a couple different people who are interested in creating their own network. It's extremely cheap, right? So when you do that, your barrier of entry being so low, they just don't have the ability to service and to really support customer and end user when something happens. This is very different than ChargePoint. When you look at their total ports installed in the United States, they're the largest for level 2. They know what they're doing very well. And then their contractor network is pretty vast, where some of the other smaller people, even if you look at your top 5, after if you remove ChargePoint, their port counts are substantially lower, and they just don't have that contractor base that ChargePoint does. So from our experience, looking at the response from ChargePoint versus almost any other manufacturer, even some of the other bigger ones, it's just not there. It's just not there.
And Andrew, I nearly forgot that our Assure contract, which is our extended support services contract guarantees a 98% uptime. So I probably should have started with that. But yeah, so we are contractually obligated to make sure that we are maximizing the uptime of your chargers.
There were a handful of people that questioned the safety and the fire risk for installing EV charging stations. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, if everything is done, and I think this is probably maybe more a question for you, Andrew, in terms of the installation, the quality of the products, but as far as the ChargePoint system is concerned, we design everything to UL. Everything is UL listed. It's absolutely a safe and tested product. We even have our own testing facility where we do rigorous testing, going well beyond whatever is required by UL. So from our standpoint, the product is safe. Andrew, you want to talk about the installation itself and how you guys ensure safety?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, having a EV charger installed operating at 208, 240 volts, what we're talking about here for multifamily, it's the same thing as being around an air conditioner or pretty much any electrical equipment that you see out there. They are short, again, everybody has a different kind of hardware out there. Some of their stuff is not UL listed. There's a couple manufacturers that are selling chargers that are just not up to par, that could have safety issues. But usually the charger, when you plug it into the vehicle, right, there's an interaction and a connection being made. The charger recognizes there's a vehicle there, the vehicle recognizes the charger there, and then it's almost like a little pilot connection, and then the charging gets activated. On my vehicle outside, I actually have a ChargePoint home version of a CPH50, and I can go to my charger and I can kind of turn it off in my app. But the second I put my hand on that charger and I try to remove it, it'll immediately cut the connection. So it's not like you're going to get an arc. It's not like you're going to have any big issue. It's, to be honest with you, the same thing as you being home and being around a 240 volt dryer. They're very, very safe. And there's no other manufacturer that goes to the extensive R&D. And also, you guys have a great, at your headquarters, you guys have a great location where you do a tremendous amount of testing on your units, hitting it with different things.
Well, Andrew, I mean, on that point of the testing, right, where we do a lot of durability testing, I think one thing I think that might be really important for Florida residents is we do a lot of water immersion testing. So we're talking about, flooding. So if we're, parking garages, if they're above ground, maybe you're a little bit safer, but if you're below ground, right, you're susceptible to flooding risk. And so having the stations immersed in water, ensuring that they're intact after long durations. I mean, we do a lot of testing like this. So I think there's probably a YouTube video out there. I don't know if Matt or somebody can probably drop in the link that shows all of the durability testing that we do. It's pretty extensive. So anyway, with safety, I think if you're following electrical code, if you're buying products that are UL listed, such as ChargePoints, and working with contractors that do solid work, right? They're licensed contractors. There's nothing to worry about with respect to safety.
Yeah, there's a lot of, to make sure you're up to code. There's a lot of things that are being done for safety reasons to make sure that people are protected, right? And as long as you're using a certified contractor or a good electrical contractor, they understand these different things, and it's very safe. I mean, when you're fueling a vehicle right at a gas station, I remember that one time I had a leak in my gas tank, and I looked down and I'm covered in gasoline, right? What if you have a spark, right? Overall, electric vehicle charging is extremely safe. And even the vehicles themselves, people come to me all the time saying, well, I don't want to have an electric vehicle because of the battery. It could cause a fire. But look how many, I mean, when you're driving down the road, how many times do you see cars have accidents or have issues and, they catch fire? It's all gasoline, it's a combustible. The issue with carbon monoxide. Electric vehicles, the way the battery architecture is designed, they are very, very safe. So I think it's a lot of misinformation out in the market of the safety of vehicles and charging, but overall, it's as long as it's done properly, it's very, very safe.
I mean, it is something to be aware of. I know, again, I'm an EV owner, have been for 5 years, huge proponent of it. And we've had a couple of the small fire departments with uninformed fire chiefs telling people, oh, you shouldn't put your charger in the garage. That might be a fire risk. And I turned around and said, wait a minute, right, let's go ask the insurance company.
Exactly.
You know, do they care if you put it in there, and is that going to increase your premium? The answer is that no, it's not going to. And I guarantee you, if they any way they could find something to increase your premium, they would, but they don't consider it a risk. And I've talked to several of them about this, and it's not even on their radar.
Yeah.
So I think that tells a good story. Let's see. Is anything else? Some people ask some different questions about the models, which the pay models and all that, which I guess, you know, it says, do you deal directly with condo owners to install, pay for individual stations at their assigned outdoor parking spaces with electricity billed directly to the owner? Can you do those kind of installations?
Yeah, it really depends on how you want to set it up. So we can bill to the owner, we can bill to the condo association. It really depends. And I think, you know, we can help you talk through how you address your capital costs and how you address your operating expenses, because that's really, to boil it down to its essence, that's what you've got to be addressing. And all that comes down to if it's dedicated parking, shared parking, right? So we kind of have to work through, you know, your scenario, the specifics to your specific situation.
Yeah,
we have options.
Yeah, and a lot of these places have got software that allows them to do simple surveys to ask people, you know, how many of you have EVs? How much do you travel with it? And, you know, would you be willing to use a shared? And, you know, so we've done a bunch of those kind of pollings before to try to get a handle on it, because that's really helpful. Because I think people that ask these questions, how many should I have for 150 unit condo? And then I feel like a lawyer, because I always have to say it depends.
Yeah.
It depends
And if
on
you
a lot
have
of
billing systems, right, that you already have in place, right, we could potentially integrate with those. So, you know, we can look at all of that to make this really easy.
Right. See if there's anything else in here broad that there's a bunch of safety things. Let's see. Any closing thoughts for anybody out there? David, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of brushed up a little bit on this. You know, again, we are, I know this is a ChargePoint call, but Rexel sells a lot of different manufacturers. The market is very much saturated with a ton of companies out there that are selling chargers. Just be careful. We're having a lot of issues right now in the market with high interest rates. A lot of companies are operating with low liquidity, and they don't have the transparency of publicly traded companies, for example, like a ChargePoint. And they're really struggling. They're asking us to cut purchase orders for them just to stay afloat. And you know, these companies, once they go under, now you're stuck with a charger that doesn't work. A recently company, I think Juice Bar, right, just went under. And we have a couple of properties that have those chargers there. Now they don't function. They cannot recognize revenue. The network or the system that's able to charge for charging and kind of manage those charges is essentially non-existent. So we're doing a rip and replace right now with ChargePoint to replace those units. But it would have been better to just do it the right way and utilize a company like ChargePoint that has it has a presence in this industry for a very long time. And again, the big thing to me is vertically integrated. It's very easy for even me to create a company and then go buy some Lite-On or Fihong chargers from Asia and put my sticker on it and pretend that I'm an EV charging company. I can go to a company kind of like Ampeco in Bulgaria that can create a network for $25,000, and I can pretend that I'm in business as an EV charging company, and I can have an app that has my name on it. I can call it Andrew EV Charging LLC. But the reality is that those companies, the barrier of entry for creating a charging company with hardware and a network is just very, very low. So one of the things that Rexel has done is we really have eliminated a lot of the noise of manufacturers that are out there, because everybody's trying to sell something. Every rep agency, every distributor has got some kind of product they want to sell. And from the untrained eye, when you look at it, when you look at this flyer, you look at a website, it looks like it's a legitimate company, but a lot of these companies are functioning with no money. They're working out of their garage, but they were able to, for $100,000, buy, half a container worth of product and buy a network and put up together a website by a college kid. And that's what we're seeing a lot of, right? So it's a very new market. It's kind of scary because how new it is. So I just say stick with the big players in the industry, like a ChargePoint. And if you ever have a question, I would say download the app, download the ChargePoint. Even if the first thing you download a ChargePoint app, and then look at their port count across the United States, and then compare any other salesperson's pitch, download their app and see how many port counts they have. I had a sales guy come up to me the other day trying to sell me their product, and I pulled up their app in front of us, downloaded it, and they had 3 ports across the whole entire country. 3. And they had a nice website too. So that's kind of my view on it, and that's why we try to make sure that when we sell to, whether it's an end user or a contractor, Rexel's been in business for a very long time. So we've been in business for 50 years. We have partners that are contractors that do millions and millions and millions of dollars a year just in the state of Florida. And we want to make sure that when we sell something, we don't want to sell something that they have to keep sending people out there to fix a problem, whether it's a contractor or an end user. So it's better to just do it right the first time and get a manufacturer who's going to be there for long term, and that they base their whole entire industry, their whole model is to function within this new vertical. So
thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the vote of confidence for ChargePoint. It's true. We've been around for a long time, if you can believe it, 17 years. My final thoughts here, and thanks for sticking around to the audience, is really, think not just about, today, but do think a little bit more long term. Put some thoughtful planning into how you're going to design EV charging at your properties. And know that, there's a lot of flexibility that can be introduced with various software options. So test us, make sure we're doing everything we can collectively, right? Between your installer partner, if you select Rexel, we think they're a great partner. So if you go with Rexel and ChargePoint, test us, hold us accountable, make sure we are helping minimize your capital costs in a way that is unique to your property. And let's work together to figure out how we best apportion the operating expenses, right? And leverage the software to make your life simple. That's all we're trying to do. Keep costs low, make life simple, so you can get on with what's really important, right? Charging your vehicles to enable you to go somewhere, right? Some destination. But the best part is you'll never have to make that destination. You never have to make a gas station a destination again. So work with us to make sure we're keeping your costs low, taking it into account, not just today, but the longer term, and use the software to make your life easy. Those are my final thoughts on this.
Thanks for watching. For more great educational content, click the subscribe button now.